Hello everyone, I'm here today to do my rankings for the final non-fiction of the Booktube prize. So we reached the final. We are going to be done soon. At the moment of filming this, I don't know what the results are. I'm just going to talk about my rankings of these books, how I rank them, how I judge them, and a little bit about them, of course. So as I said, I was judging the final for non-fiction, and there were some chunky books in there, so it took me a while. I normally try to finish a week or two before the ballots are due, but yeah, this time I finished like 3 days before. Sorry, Robert, I'm sorry, but yeah, there were some big books in there. But yeah, let's just start with the rankings. So how I'm going to do this, I had to read 6 books and rank them from 1 to 6. I'm going to go through them from the last one, from the 6th one to the first one, so that we build a little bit of emotion. In my 6th place, I had Before the Last Border by Jessica Goudeau, and this one was about refugees in the US. So it followed specifically 2 refugees stories. One was from some eastern country. I think it was Vietnam or Myanmar or somewhere Southeast Asia. I don't remember at the moment. And then the other one was, I believe, Middle Eastern. And they both of these people were able to go to the US as refugees, and they were accepted in the US as refugees. And as far as I understand, the author did have a lot of conversations with these people to write these stories, and she had the approval of these people for the stories, and she also had some chapters in between explaining a little bit more about the refugee policies of the US. So it's a very US-centric book, which I understand, but it annoyed me a little bit because I think that there is conversations to be had about how other countries do it, and she did say at some points how in which ways the US policies were better than the European policies, which fair enough. I don't have enough information about the US policies to know if they're better or worse. I know that particularly in the Netherlands the refugee policies suck, but I don't know how it works in other countries as to make those comparisons. But she also didn't give the information to say why they were so much better or so much worse. She just said they're worse in Europe. And also another thing that annoyed me is that the way that she wrote these stories, they were almost as a fiction story. Like, she talked a lot about how these people felt in a lot of places, and I'm not sure how much she talked about this with these people, but it felt a little bit like Three Women by Lisa Taddeo, in the sense that it's just stories built around the actual stories of these people, but I don't know how much of it's actually real and how much these people shared, and how much it's just romanticization of their situations, and like imagination plays a role. I think for sure imagination plays a role on all of these things, because I don't think anybody is able to remember all of the details, all of this, exactly how they felt at every single moment, and that these stories describe over the years. So yeah, for me it was a little bit artificial. It had a clear message of we should accept refugees. They are just people. They are not here to harm anybody. They have gone through a very tough stuff, and we should be empathetic towards that side, which I completely agree with that message. It just felt a little bit of emotionally manipulative in that sense. It was trying to make you feel those things without actually sticking to the facts. It was more of an emotional call than a rational call. And yeah, for me, it just felt like a little bit manipulative and a little bit. I understand the point. I agree with the point. I don't need that point personally. So for me, it was not that impactful and that great of a book in itself. I think the message is great. I think the book itself was mediocre. So that's why it's in my 6th place. In the next two are very close together, and I think I have actually just put them in the order of pure enjoyment for me, rather than what I think it's more worth it. But yeah, it was very difficult, this next two. But yeah, in 5th place I put Red Comet by Heather Clark, which is a biography of Sylvia Plath. It's a 1,000-page biography of Sylvia Plath, to be more exact. And I struggled through this. This was so long and so detailed. And I think it was incredibly well researched and incredibly well written. In like the prose level of it was really good, and it had like quotations in every page, and every chapter had like 100 references or 200 references. It was like incredibly well researched, and it's an incredible feat. That's why I'm a little bit hesitant to put it that low in the list. But honestly, if you're not into Sylvia Plath, if you're not a super fan of Sylvia Plath, which I'm not, this was just so tedious to go through. Like, I understand for people that love Sylvia Plath how this is amazing, and I think that it is an amazing book in itself as a piece of research, but my enjoyment of it was just not there because I didn't care that much about Sylvia Plath. And I think that, I mean, the author was clearly targeting a certain group of people that love Sylvia Plath, and that's fine, and for those people this book is amazing. But for the general population, if you are just like a little bit curious, like you've read The Bell Jar and you're like, oh, who is Sylvia Plath? This is a lot to take. It's not very approachable for people that are not deep into Sylvia Plath. So that's why I felt like I had to put it in here, not because it's not an amazing book, but just because my personal enjoyment of it was not there. So yeah, I mean, and I think that I saw a review of this book from someone. I will put it down in the comments below, in the description box. But he loves Sylvia Plath, and he was talking about how other biographies portray Sylvia Plath in a very negative way. In the sense that, I mean, she killed herself, so they use that demonization of Sylvia Plath and like very disturbed person, she was depressed and all that. And this book does make a big effort on showing like, yeah, she was depressed and she was struggling and she was sick, but she also had a lot of life in herself, and her relationship with Ted Hughes, who is her husband, was trouble, and he cheated on her, and they did have problems, but there was also a deep love for each other in there as well. So it does show that Sylvia Plath was a complex person, and her life was a complex life, which it's something that I appreciated as well. The fact that she was not a black or white person just because of her mental issues, but yeah, it was just too much detail. Like, I did not need to know that much detail about her as an introduction. This doesn't work. It's a great piece of research, but it's not a very approachable book, so that's why I put it in 5th place. In the 4th place I have the other biography of this list, and that's The Dead Are Rising. I don't remember the author, but I will put it somewhere. And this is a biography of Malcolm X. And now, so in this case, I think it's also very well researched. It's not as well written as Red Comet, but it's also a big one, not as big, but it's also a big one. But it gives a lot more about the context of the life of Malcolm X. So there are chapters in this book that are not even like Malcolm X is not even a part of it. It's more about what the Black experience at that time was, and where the fight for rights for Black people were in the US. And that gives context to the life of Malcolm X. So this book doesn't go a lot into Malcolm X's life. I mean, he obviously, it's a biography, so it goes into his life, but it doesn't go into his feelings. It doesn't go into his inner thoughts. It doesn't go into all of that. Maybe it's because that material does not exist. Obviously, Sylvia Plath was a writer, so she wrote a lot of things. She wrote poems, but also letters and things explaining her feelings. Malcolm X probably did not do that, so there's a lot of less information on that side. So the book was a lot more focused on the context in which he developed his experience, and in which he developed his theories and his Black Panther movement. And I appreciated that more. I think it's, in a sense, it's more approachable because these things are more well known and more less niche, let's say. It was quite a dry approach to it, like there was no feeling. It was more about just this is what happened kind of biography. So it was lacking a little bit in that sense, but I think that it gave a good understanding on how this movement came to be and how Malcolm X came to develop the Islamic, what does he call it? Like the Islamic nation in the US and the Black Panther movement. And I think that that for itself I appreciated more than the specifics of Malcolm X's life in itself. And yeah, I mean, it is also, as I said, a very well researched book. The writing was a little bit dry at times, but yeah, overall it was okay. Then in third place I have put Caste by Isabel Wilkerson. I think that this one is a crowd favorite. I would not be surprised if it wins, and I will not be sad if it wins. I think any of the next three I will be happy if they win. But yeah, Caste is it's a book that tries to go into the argument that the way that Black people in the US are treated is similar to other caste system, like the Indian caste system, but also like the Jews were treated in Europe back when the Nazis were in power. And it compares like different instances in which these things are similar. So yeah, like this book I read actually before the Booktube Prize. I had read it a while ago, and I think that the argument that she puts out makes sense. I don't know if it's a very original one or not. I don't know enough about the topic to know if this is something that she came up with or it has been done before. I think that the way that Blacks are treated in the US has been compared to how the Jews were treated in Europe several times before. So I guess that one is not new. I don't know if comparing it to the untouchables in India is a new thing or not. But I think it did give quite a lot of insight about the dynamics of racism in America. I think it's quite poignant in that sense. However, I have to say that I read it, I don't know, maybe a year ago, and I did get that message, but I don't remember a lot of the details. I think maybe it was not that deep into the details and the arguments to be that memorable, maybe just because it is a book targeted at the wider audience, so it didn't have a lot of the academic nonsense of the topic. But yeah, that's why it's in my third place. I think it's a great book. I think everyone should read it, but I also think that it's not as memorable as you would think when you read it, at least for me. And yeah, I think it makes some good points, and I would recommend it to people. So yeah, that's my third place. In second place, I put Our Bodies, Their Battlefields, by Christina, I think. This one I actually read in the first round of the Booktube Prize, and I still have vivid memories of certain passages because it's very brutal. I have to say it's a little bit repetitive at points. So this book basically, it makes the point that rape is often used in war as a weapon to destroy local communities and local cultures and peoples, and we often just put it as part of, I don't know, other things that are done to communities, like it's one more little thing. But actually the systematic use of rape to destroy cultures is a lot more than just like something that happens at war. And this book tries to show in many different cases how this is the case. So it can get a little bit repetitive at times. It's also extremely bleak. I mean, I still have those descriptions in my mind about how they rape 18-month-old babies, which I still don't I struggle to comprehend. I still have those images in my mind, so that's how much of an impact this made into me personally. But yeah, I do think that sometimes it feels a little bit repetitive because it just shows case by case, and she goes into, this is why rape is used, it should be treated as a different crime of war. But I think overall, like, she does a really good job at pointing out exactly why that is, and it's every single instance is a little bit different, and it shows how rape can be used in different ways to completely destroy communities in ways that sometimes weapons are not able to. And yeah, I think that it's brutal, it's bleak, it's not a fun read, but I think it's a very important one, and I think that the point that she's making is completely valid, and it's something that we should be discussing more. So yeah, that's why it's in my second place. And then in my first place is Inferno by Catherine Cho, which is a memoir about when the author had postnatal psychosis. Is that how you call it? Like she had psychosis after giving birth, and she was hospitalized for it for, I think, a couple of weeks. And I like this one especially. I mean, memoirs tend to be very popular in this prize because they tend to be more approachable in general, and this was the case for this as well. But I think that in this particular memoir, also the way that she structured it, so she goes back and forth between the days that she spent in this mental hospital and the things that happened before that. So we see a little bit about her background as a Korean in the US. We see how she met her husband, how they develop a relationship, decided to have children together, and then she got pregnant and she had the child, and then what happened after, and all of the little things that build up to get her into this this mental ward because of her issues with that, and also at the same time we see how she's treated in a mental hospital and the different things that she goes through there, and the nuances of how that treat is good sometimes and not so good sometimes, and all of that. I think that the way that she built the story and used the different timelines to build the story, it made me especially able to understand where she was coming from and where all of the little pieces fitted in a way that was seamless, and it was so immersive. And when I was reading, I was fully invested in what she was saying and fully concentrated on her story and how she ended up there. Another thing that I found personally very valuable is the fact that even though I don't have these experiences in mental wards, or I have had struggles with mental health before, but not to the level that she had, and the fact that she goes through this pregnancy and ends up in such a difficult position, it felt not exactly it was not exactly like I could relate to her in the sense of I could totally see myself going through the same thing, but it was more of I can see how this happens, and I have complete empathy for her situation, but it didn't immediately make me worried that could happen to anybody. I mean, that can happen to anybody, that's not what I'm saying, but like, it didn't make it feel like it was inevitable for it to happen to me or any other person. So I appreciated that. I don't know if it's distance, but that ability to make you empathize with her without pouring all of those emotions and all of those experiences into my own body. If that makes any sense. Does that make any sense? I don't know, but I did appreciate that, and I think it was a brilliantly constructed memoir, so that's why it's in my top one. And yeah, I would love it to see it win, but as I said, any of my top three, I think they're completely deserving of the prize. So yeah, I think it was a good list. I mean, the bottom three, like the bottom one, I think it was not for me. The other two, I completely understand why they're here. I think they are very good non-fiction books. It was just personally my enjoyment of them, and my interest on those topics was not as much as I could have had. So that was more of a it's not you, it's me kind of thing. And then the top three, I think they are all brilliant, and it was kind of hard to put them in a certain order. But yeah, overall I have enjoyed the prize. I think it's a fun thing, and it makes you think in different ways about books that you're reading, because you have to judge them and put them against each other. So that's always an interesting experience to have. But overall I enjoyed it. By the time this comes out, you will know what have happened with the prize and who won. I'll probably make a reaction video at some point. But yeah, I did enjoy the books. Let me know if you have read any and if you have any thoughts on them. And yeah, next year it's going to be interesting as well, because there is a translated section of the prize. So I'm actually trying to figure myself out if I want to do this next year, and if I want to do it for all the categories, or maybe I will just do translated books, because that's what I enjoy most. I think for me, the past couple of years, the fiction category has not been my cup of tea. It's more of more like popular books, which makes sense. And the non-fictions is always fun, but they're obviously a lot more dense and tend to be longer, so it's always a big commitment that I'm not sure I will want to make next year. But maybe translated books is the solution for next year. We will see. I'll keep you informed about that. But yeah, I enjoyed. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what your thoughts are on these books and on the Booktube price as a whole. And on the next video, bye!